Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be flipping through my completed second half of 2025 project life. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, you guys, I finished my 2025 project life and I'm so excited to have this one done and put on the shelf. I want to start before diving into this by saying I do have process videos for every single week in here available on my channel. So if you want to see more details about any spread, you can find that, including a setup for this album, which covers the title page. I also have a flip through of the first half of the year and process videos for those if you have missed them. So I do Project Life weekly in a 9x12 album, and I split the year into 2 albums. You can see this is pretty thick. I don't really do mini inserts in here. I used to in the past do traditional layouts kind of mixed in, but now that I do mini-me albums separate from these, I don't really do that anymore. Also, it just ends up being too thick. My main inserts that I do include are monthly ephemera pages, and you'll see that as I start flipping through. For my weekly spreads, I kind of change the dates. So I call them weekly spreads. I typically run them Monday through Sunday. However, I adjust them as needed. So this album for the second half of the year is always going to start on July 1st. But I did do a short week for this first week because we took a weekend trip to New York City. I only live a couple hours north of the city. I used to live down there and I go down there pretty frequently, but I usually don't go for fun. So we decided to go see a Mets versus Yankees game. And we also went for the 4th of July to see fireworks, and we went to see Anne Juliet on Broadway. So we fit all of that into a weekend. Plus I got to go to Strand Books, which I haven't been to since I used to live in the area. And I also went to some other craft shops that I've been wanting to visit down there. For this spread, I used the July Stories by the Month kit from Ali Edwards. I typically use a lot of Ali Edwards products in here, and I also use a lot of Cocoa Daisy, but I do use other things from my stash. This one, I believe, was one of the Storyteller kits from Ali Edwards. I planned those in the Storyteller classroom, and I really like using those throughout my album. I tend to do one per month, similar to how the story kits were one per month because there was a new kit every month. The Storyteller kits are one per quarter. And so for each kit, I plan 3 spreads. And I like doing ones where I can do something like this, where there's like a repeated element across the page. I'm not always gonna do that with those kits or with kits in general, but I do really like when I'm able to do that. This is the stories. This is the July Stories by the Month. You know what? This one was not the July Stories by the Month. I think this was the stash busting of older July Stories by the Month, now that I think about it. This was the actual July Stories by the Month, because for this year, every time that I did the Stories by the Month kit, I included my ephemera insert, and I'm going to continue doing that in 2026. I really like that pairing, and sometimes I pull in some of the products. So here I cut these. This was like a 4x6 card that had these like this squares, and I used it to include some of the smaller pieces of ephemera, which I thought was super fun, and also included a lot more. So a lot of the ephemera in July was from my trip to New York City, but not everything, and I just put it all in here because it's for the entire month on this one page. This week we did some painting in our bedroom, but otherwise not a ton going on. I put these numbered chipboard and then told my stories here on this card. You'll see from looking through my album that not a lot goes on in my life outside of travel, but that's okay. I really don't mind that there's not a ton going on. In fact, I always feel super busy, but I end up just documenting whatever is real at the time. So like this week, there's like 3 photos of my cat, or 4 photos of my cat, some craft projects, just a selfie, some decor for my house. Like that's pretty much what's going on most of the time, other than travel. So here's another time where I adjusted it to just be a weekend. And this, I took a weekend trip up to visit my friend who lives in the Adirondacks, who is pregnant at the time. I actually just saw her and saw the baby. So this time she came down to me, but it was fun to go up there for the weekend. We did the farmer's market. We went hiking. The guys played golf. It was just a nice getaway. And I'm pretty sure I used like just stash busting for this one. So I definitely do a lot of stash busting in here. Typically I do the stories by the month kit for 1 spread per month. I do the storyteller kit for 1 spread per month. And then I do the Cocoa Daisy kit, which is this one, for 1 spread per month. And then usually I have at least 1 additional spread because there's typically at least 4 weeks in the month. But with me messing with the date, sometimes I end up with 5 or even 6 per month. And those tend to be my stash busting ones. Here is another storyteller one. Again, repeating embellishments or repeated cards throughout. This week was the week that I hit 10,000 followers on Instagram, and my boyfriend surprised me with these 10K balloons. So I took a bunch of photos with them for Instagram, and it was just super fun. And that was kind of the main thing that happened this week. So I was able to put a bunch of them throughout the spread. This week I went to my friend's baby shower, just some random craft stuff. This is the August Stories by the Month kit. So again, I'm using it to include ephemera. I didn't have nearly as much ephemera in August. It was mostly from Stationery Day, which actually was here. I went to Saugerties, which is another local town, with my 2 craft friends, both Jen's. And so I have this whole page was that adventure, but a lot of this ephemera was from that day. So with the ephemera, I just kind of collect it throughout the month and then put it in there whenever I get to putting it together. Okay, so this one, again, I think this was another stash busting one. I was using these tags as a kind of jumping off point, and then I pulled pieces from my stash to fit in with this spread. Here's another stash busting spread. This one is using older Becky Higgins cord kits. I still have a lot of those, and I intend to continue using them through my album in 2026. I will probably do a couple stash busting spreads using those kits going into 2026. And then another storyteller kit here. This one, I had these really big words and I wanted to use all of them. A lot of times when I'm trying to use kits and things, one of my goals is to use all of something. So if there's a repeated embellishment or something, I want to use all of them in the spread so I don't have like 1 or 2 to put back into my stash. I used to not do that because then I used to have like 1 or 2 that I would keep, and because then I didn't use it all and I would have like that precious piece left. But now I'm trying to reduce my stash, and that's one way I'm doing it. This is the September Cocoa Daisy kit. I loved this kit. When this kit came out, it was my favorite kit of all time from them, although they have had some really amazing kits since then. So I'm not even sure if this is my favorite one still, but I love this kit so much. It was like a book and tea theme, which is very much for me. And I just had a lot of fun with this one. I really liked how I cut this card out to make my own embellishment, and here as well. This is the September Stories by the Month. So again, I'm adding in my ephemera page. Sometimes I put the ephemera on the back if I have a lot more. If not, I'm finding other ways to fill this. So like here, I put some of the vellum from the kit. I created a flip up here for some hidden journaling about kind of like a rough day. But otherwise, you can see just like everyday life stuff is being documented. This one I again used, this was stash busting, but I used these from the Stories by the Month kit as a jumping off point. So that's something I've been doing quite a bit this year, and I want to continue, is picking a specific embellishment that's repeated in a kit and using that as my jumping off point, or that I have in my stash, just to kind of use it up. My friend had her baby. Then here's the October Cocoa Daisy kit. And this was the week, this is a short week because this was leading up to our big vacation that we were going on. So I basically just did the week of September 28th and then going into the first part of October through the 3rd. And then we were going on vacation. So I included our travel day because otherwise like these flight photos would get cut out. So then for vacation, I do a different spread for each destination, even though it's only a few days. And so this one was Barcelona. So again, it's only a couple days that we were there. I added this flip out page. This is from, all of my page protectors pretty much are from scrapbook.com. And they have this is the first time I've used one of these, but I really like it as a way to include some additional photos. I used the Ali Edwards travel collection from 2025 in the spread. I plan to use that collection to do a travel album, not for this vacation, but of a vacation I took in 2024 to Europe, Eastern Europe, and I just haven't done it yet. I started planning it, but we'll see when I have time to actually put it together. Our next destination was Marrakesh, Morocco. And so for this one, I used the History Story Kit, which was an older kit that I had just in my stash. I have some older story kits still put together. Usually once I've used a kit a few times, I will break up whatever's left and put it into my stash. But there's a few of the older story kits that I just never had a chance to use. And I hope to kind of work through those at some point this year. Our next stop, so this one I actually split. It was 2 destinations, but each one was only like 1 day. So I did 1 page for each. So this side was Ait Ben Haddou, which is this like clay village out in the middle of the desert on the edge of the Atlas Mountains in the Sahara Desert, which was just so cool to see. And then the second page is Casablanca. So we went to Casablanca so we did this and then went back to Marrakesh and then we went to Casablanca. So I didn't really feel like either of these destinations needed their own spread, and because we only spent 1 day in Casablanca. And I also felt like even though this was part of like Marrakesh, it was like a day trip, so I wanted it to be separate. So I really liked how I split this. So really there are no rules with my dates. This is clearly only 3 days. And then our last destination was Madrid, and then we took a day trip to Segovia. So I split it into Madrid and Segovia. Again, I'm using the travel collection from Ali Edwards. And what I ended up doing here was I just did some type journaling because there was so much that I wanted to include. And this just made it easier. I made my own journaling cards by using some of the washi from the kit and these die cuts. And then I just used my gray mile liner to highlight the date on each one, and that was just a fun way to do a recap. Segovia had the most photos, so this page is basically just photos with 1 filler card, and the journaling is on this side. Even though we were in Madrid for a couple of days, there just weren't as many photos, and I was super sick. I got a really bad cold, and so I had a photo of my Spanish cough medicine because that was part of the story. Then here is back home, back to work, back to normal life. And this one I'm using the Storyteller kit. This is now the next quarter, I'm pretty sure. I think maybe this is the fun one. The Storyteller kits in 2025 had themes, but starting in 2026, they don't have themes anymore, and they're just kind of like fun kits. But even though they had themes, they were kind of loose themes, so it's kind of hard to remember which one is which. But this one, I think this was actually maybe not from that kit. I don't remember. My favorite part of this spread, though, were how I used these and put the words on them. Now we're using the October stories by the month to wrap up the end of October. So this was the week with Halloween, so I documented that, which isn't really a huge deal for me because I don't have little kids, but we did get trick-or-treaters. And then my ephemera page again, which has some stuff from vacation, but honestly, actually, no, I didn't put anything from this vacation because all of the things from the vacation I have in Ziplocs to include in my travel album. So I decided instead to use other stuff from the month. Whereas the one from July, which was our New York City trip, that was just a weekend where I'm not going to do a separate album for that. So everything went into here. Then this is the November kit from Coco Daisy. I tend to use that kit very early in the month so that I can film and share that video while it's still relevant for people who want to use it during that month. And then this is, again, the Storyteller kit. So for this one, I decided to do this repeated card all the way across the spread and do 1 card per day and just do some journaling about the day. I don't usually do this much journaling, and I don't usually journal day by day if you've seen kind of like how they are in all of my spreads, but it was fun to do it once. This one I believe was also a stash busting one. So this spread was the week that I started getting out the Christmas decorations. So I have this beautiful color of like the Christmas baubles. And then this is my wall in my laundry room. If you have been around for a few years, you saw when I redid my laundry room. If you didn't, I have a highlighted stories on my Instagram of my laundry room redo, but this is the wallpaper in there. So I often will take photos in front of it. But it just so happened that both these photos were the same week. It was super colorful. I also had like this one that had a lot of colors. So I decided to really embrace the bright colors and pull that in with my cards. Then we have the November Stories by the Month kit and my November ephemera. I didn't have enough for the back, so I just did some pattern paper and one of the die cut pieces. I feel like I started doing this in this album, but really trying to pull in parts of the kit and just use more. So like this is one of the pattern papers from the kit that is behind some of these pieces of ephemera that don't fill the entire pocket. And here again, using the die cut pieces from the kit, trying to use every single one so that I don't have any left to put into my stash. And always using things that are dated, because if I didn't use this November 2025 card, I would never get to use it because November 2025 is done and documented and I'm not going to do it again. Then moving into December. For December, this is actually a little bit of a longer week because I decided to shift my week so I could finish the album up in a way that just made sense. So there's kind of like 5 weeks in December, not 5 full weeks, but I just split it to be 4. So that I could end, because I always want to end my album on December 31st. This is the Cocoa Daisy kit for December. It was very snow themed and it was a super snowy week, so it worked perfectly for this spread. Then here I'm using the Storyteller kit again. This one I had a lot of fun with doing these and kind of like splitting my stories based on these words and using that as a jumping off point to figure out my stories. Then this is the week of Christmas. So for the week of Christmas, I used my December daily supplies, and I've been doing this for a couple years in here now. I just have so many December daily supplies and I'm never going to be able to use all of them in my albums. And I do purge a lot, but there's so many pieces that I love and I want to use. So I'm trying to like find ways to use them in other projects, and this is a good way to do that. Not everything from December daily is going to translate into pocket pages, but a lot of them do. There are a lot of the 3x4 cards that I was able to use. Like these were some repeated ones from a main kit from a couple of years ago. I think this one was from this year. These were these large embellishments from a couple of years ago, and I used a lot of them in my December daily in the past, but I'm down to just a few left, so I'm trying to kind of use them. And then this is something I like to do, which you can do in a December daily album or travel or anything, but just kind of come up with a card or have a card that has like spaces and just play with embellishment. So I created 2 filler cards using, background card was actually from one of the Liz Tamahaha mini kits, maybe 2024. And I cropped it, it was a 4x6. I cropped it into 2 3x4s and made my own kind of embellishment clusters. And it was just a good way to use, like, I had like only a few of these plastic pieces left. These were like the last 2 on a sheet, and just kind of use some things up. And then I wrapped up the year with the December Stories by the Month kit. This one was super fun. I really had a lot of fun using these Astras. I wasn't able to use all of the ones that were in the kit. Quite a few of them were cut out of cards, but I used a good portion of them. My favorite, I think, is what I did here because my journaling didn't take the full card up. I was able to add a whole row of them across the bottom. I'd considered doing the same here, but by the time I finished my journaling, there wasn't gonna be enough space, so I just added a word phrase strip. And then this, I made my own card. It was really supposed to be like 1, 2, 3 stories, but it was on a 4x6 and it didn't have a space for it. And I thought this would be fun to just do like a 3, 2, 1, 2026 countdown for the new year. And then to wrap up my album, oh, there's like smush on there. To wrap up my album, I just put a pattern paper in here and a larger chipboard that was in my stash. Again, just stash busting, using up some older supplies and not making it complicated where it was going to take me a long time, because I wanted to just kind of finish this one up and get it onto my shelf so I can rotate in my 2026 album and start on that. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said at the beginning, there are process videos for every single one of these spreads here on my channel. I will link in the description box below some of the things that you might want to watch some of my other Project Life videos. But otherwise, if you want to just check out my channel, I have years worth of Project Life process videos, and I have many flip throughs of my albums. Not every single one, but I've done this project since 2013, so I do have a good amount of them here on my YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye.